Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts. Today we're going to be making this Charming Hexagon Table Topper. To make this table topper, you will need a package of pre-cut 5-inch squares and just over 3/4 of a yard fabric or scrap for the backing. This topper that I made a number of years ago is using Halloween fabric, and today the topper I'm going to be making is with some Easter fabric. This is Easter Egg Hunt collection by Natalia Abello for Riley Blake Designs. So the first thing you're going to do, which by the way, all of the materials I use for this project are going to be linked in the video description, including the template that you'll need to cut out to make your hexagons. So you will need to select 37 of your pre-cut squares, 37 of them from your pack. And for your template, you will download the template and cut out in the paper your hexagon pattern. Now this template here is actually a bit larger than the one I used for the Halloween topper, because I wanted to get the absolute most out of these 5-inch squares that we could. So you'll download your template, cut it out for the paper, and then you could also, this here is cardboard that's from the back of your charm pack. You can trace it onto this cardboard template and cut it out. If you would like to use that as a template, you can use template plastic, or you can actually just, since it's got straight edges, if you want to just cut it out on the paper and not use template plastic or cardboard, you can use that as well. That's actually how I did it. So what you will do then is you will take your template and place it onto your pre-cut 5-inch square, and as you can see, it gets the most, it goes basically edge to edge here. And I'm using this rotating cutting mat for this, which will be very helpful as we trim around the hexagon. So you essentially just line your ruler up on the edge of your hexagon and trim. And you make your way, you rotate and you make your way all the way around the hexagon. And there is your cut hexagon from the template. Now you can layer, if you have a sharp blade, you can layer a few of these at a time and cut them together. So you will need to cut a total of 37 hexagons. You will lay out your 37 hexagons as shown in the diagram. Your center row will have 7 hexagons, and then on each side of the center row there will be 6 hexagons, followed by 5, and then the outside rows will contain 4 hexagons each. Once all of your hexagons are laid out, you will then sew them into rows, as I've done here for 6 of the 7 rows. The key to sewing these hexagons together is that you will start and stop 1/4 of an inch from the edge on your seams. So what we're going to do is take the 7th row to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how we get that done. Now when sewing your hexagons into rows, what you're going to do is place your hexagons right sides together, and then what I like to do is mark 1/4 of an inch in from these 2 corners where I'm going to be sewing, and just make a dot. And that will show you where you need to start and stop sewing. And when you do that, since we're not sewing through to the edge, we need to make sure that we backstitch at those dots. Now you can see that we have sewn, we've left 1/4 of an inch open from edge to edge. And you just repeat that process for the rest of your row. Once your row is sewn together, then you will then press your seams open so that they're flat like they are in this row. Now that we have our 7 rows completed, we need to sew them together. So this is our first 2 rows. We're going to start here, and we're going to start at this top seam. So what you'll need to do is flip it right sides together and lay it over so that those seams align. And as you'll notice here, on this seam we can start, for the edges of it, we can start off of the edge of the fabric. We don't need to mark the 1/4 of an inch. We can start from the edge, but we do need to stop when there's a 1/4 of an inch left. We don't need to mark that as well because that is actually going to be shown by this seam here. So we'll go ahead and sew this together. So there's our first sewn seam. Now to sew the next one, it will be these 2 seams. So what we have to do is place it right sides together, but you'll see that it's a little funky. So what you have to do is fold this first hexagon in half as shown, and then sew this seam together. And again, you will start and stop at the 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so now we have 2 seams sewn. And our next seam will then be here between this mustard color and the white. So when we flip it right sides together, this hexagon here gets folded in half so that we can lay it straight. And you will sew this seam. You will continue in this method to get these 2 rows sewn together. Here are the first 2 rows all sewn together. And as you can see, I have pressed all of my seams open so it lays nice and flat. I'm going to now go ahead and sew the rest of the rows together, and we'll show you how to finish this topper off. Our hexagons are all sewn together. Now we have a sweet quilt top. And it lays so flat because we made sure to press all of our seams open on the back. Now it's time to quilt it. You can do the traditional method of quilting and then finishing it off with a bias binding, which is what I think I want to do with this version, or you can skip the binding route like I did on the Halloween version, and I'll show you what you need to do for that. To do that, you will take your quilt top and a scrap piece of batting, and you will spray base your quilt top to the batting, and then you'll need to trim the batting so that it matches the edges of your quilt top all the way around. Once that is adequately basted and trimmed, you will then lay it right sides down onto the backing fabric so that the right side of the backing fabric faces the right side of the quilt top. Then you will pin baste at that point, and pin baste it enough, basically at least in every corner and maybe a couple through the center. And at that point you will then sew a 1/4 of an inch around the entire perimeter of the quilt top, leaving open just one side. So I would say leaving open between these points here. Then once you have sewn all the way around with a 1/4 of an inch, you will you'll reach in between the quilt top and the backing and turn it right side out. And you'll likely need a pointer to point out, to help get these points nice and crisp. And once you get it all the way turned out, you'll have to give it a good press, and then you will fold in the side that you left open so that you could then 1/8 of an inch all the way around the outside edge. You'll sew to close that hole up, and then you can quilt as desired from there. On this version, I echoed the seams a 1/4 of an inch on either side, and I think that's what I'm planning to do for the Easter version as well. Now let's take a look at the Easter quilt. If you make a Charming Hexagon Table Topper, I'd love to see it. Please tag me on social media at Material Girl Quilts and use the hashtag Charming Hexagon Table Topper. I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember that all the links are included in the video description below. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.